to have a laboratory. And of course, there was Fab Lab and Design Lab and all kind of labs. And my field is visual arts and sort of contemporary fine art. And the purpose of these laboratories was to enhance research that could get external funding and meet the kind of metric requirements of academic life. And I was really frustrated, and I kind of forgot. We had our meeting, and I got more and more irritated about this when everybody was presenting what wonderful new innovations they were going to have and all that. And then it came, Jaana, so what's your fine art laboratory? And I said that we are going to have a slow thinking laboratory. And then somebody, oh, what's that? And I said, you will see, because I didn't know what it would be. And and then, like, sometimes things really they just come together. So we used to have this kind of aquarium-like exhibition space where always we had students or staff exhibitions. And then somebody just suddenly resigned from their exhibition time. And so our curator asked that, Jaana, can you think anybody who could fill the gap? And I said, yes, I can do it. So, and I said that, well, I'll create the slow thinking laboratory. So in a sort of the first version was just this space, took there an armchair, some rugs, a table, some paper, crayons, just as creating a space to be and inviting sort of either students or staff that, that when you just want to take a pause, you can go there and sit in the gallery. And then when anybody requires, so what are you doing? You are in a slow thinking lab. So you are actually busy doing something. And that was a kind of, it was in one way fun. On the other hand, it became more and more serious. And then I got funding from Finnish funding agency for innovations for this slow thinking laboratory, so that that we got 150,000 euros, which was quite a big money for something which was very kind of controversial to the mainstream thinking how to become more efficient. And that was a kind of a start for this slow thinking thing. So now I have moved on to loitering, and that's what I'm going to give you the talk. So this was just sort of a background, and this slow thinking lab, I gave a speak in Plymouth University Art Research Center, and that's actually true there, and the doctoral school jointly in Plymouth, Cornwall, sort of Falmouth and Bristol, so where kind of Bob and I have met in that realm. So anyway, so I'm going to, I have prepared a paper, so I'm going to read, and as Bob said, you can walk and do whatever you like while you listen to me. I will just show you.
Oh.
Can you see there is a landscape?
Yep.
Yep. Yeah. So this is my kind of my working environment in a sort of seeing the trees swaying away, and it's actually it's very soothing. So, and the art of loitering. So my talk considers the relationship between idleness or loitering, and active doing in time and creative work. I am asking whether it is possible for a person to be productive in their inaction and unproductive in their busy activity. Who has permission to loiter, and what could mean a quick fall into loitering? Is democracy in danger in a society filled with constant rush, including universities? I make suggestions and ask questions rather than declare and give answers. The talk reminds us of the necessity of pause as an enabler of thinking and wondering. I approach slowness, idleness, and possibility of laziness from the perspective of artistic thinking. I talk about the topic through personal experiences and consider how artistic thinking can be a path to societal change and a reassessment of the culture of speed. Can slowing down open the way away from a human-centered worldview towards a life together with all living things? Is loitering the answer to sustainable living and abandoning consumption? American philosopher Alva Noe writes about art as strange tools. According to him, art can be seen as a philosophical practice, the purpose of which is to draw attention to various phenomena and examine them from new perspectives without prejudice. Noe does not use the concept of artistic thinking, but his reflection is close to the concept of artistic thinking used in the art world. Artistic thinking can be understood as thinking through artistic activity in which a shared experience is expressed in music, visual arts, words, and performance. Artistic thinking can also be the ability to build imaginative structures that open up new possibilities for examining fictional reality. Artistic thinking differs from creative and design thinking in that artistic thinking produces new possible perspectives and reveals questions that have not yet been asked, while creative and design thinking strive to solve identified problems. Artistic thinking has been considered in art universities for the past 20 years from the perspectives of different art fields. For me, artistic thinking means reaching out to realities that are difficult to reach and beyond the reach of words, and trying to bring these dimensions into commonly shared language. If we can imagine other realities, we can try to make them possible in our own time and world. In my own research, I strive to view things and phenomena as art and thus build compositions that can be transformed from fiction into everyday reality. Pascal Guillen sees the gray area between fact and fiction as an interesting meeting point between the possible and the impossible. Patricia Levy argues for the knowledge revealed by fiction. Through the diversity of fiction and artistic expression, it is possible to achieve an understanding of things and phenomena that no other research methods can. In this talk, I discuss the relationship between time and the coexistence of living things through artistic thinking. My way of talking may seem fictional, but I absolutely adhere to the truthfulness of experience. I follow the call of artistic research to freedom of expression also in the form of this talk. The difficulty of loitering. I want to loiter. I am lost in this world of numbers where intangible values are measured by numbers, human growth is given a grade, and speed and quantity have strangely become the greatest and most valuable determinants of success. I want to go outside, away from places where the fear of mistakes takes all the oxygen out of new creation, where falling is a threat and where slowness is not seen as virtue. What are we in a hurry for? Why should everything happen faster than ever? What are we going to do with all the time we might have saved? The painter Agnes Martin wrote that the measure of your life is the amount of all the beauty and happiness that you are capable of being aware of. What is the measure of a person who has collapsed spiritually, a person who cannot find a connection to any world outside themselves? What is the meaning of time, which in saving, a person has exhausted themselves so much that they cannot get out of bed in the morning? Perhaps instead of saving time, we should focus on spending time, because time is the only inexhaustible source within everyone's reach. Time does not end even if our own life ends. Time will not end even at the end of the world, which is a comforting thought, as global crisis rages in every corner of the world, even in the atmosphere. I want to explore loitering, slurping, and create a concept for this activity, which can be also inaction, so that the world understands how badly we long for a life that allows us just to be. I reach for a state of being where experiencing beauty and goodness is possible. This is how it happens. I lie on my bed and think of flowing waters, when the smell of river mud fills my nostrils from somewhere far away. I close my eyes and think of summer, endless sitting by the river's edge, a time that feels like eternity. I can stare at the same object with my closed eyes for as long as I want, and I try to make what I saw once appear before me from somewhere deep in the depths of my memory. Green turns brown or blue behind my eyelids, gray is violet. A swan, swimming gracefully in the water, approaches the shore and suddenly it limps with heavy and clumsy steps, splashing its flippers to peck at something in the mud on the shore. And when the whiteness of the swan appears on the muddy bank of the river, the colors suddenly change. Time passes and new shades of color, plants, rocks, algae, beach grass, birds with tails in the air and beaks submerged in the water appear before the eyes. The landscape recreates itself as the mind focuses on what it sees and hears. If you close your eyes remembering the smell of river mud, the other senses will bring all the rivers of the past before your closed eyelids, if you just wait long enough. I draw my observations on a sketchbook. I conjure up an image. The memory has been etched in my mind, and now I transfer it to a wood block. I carve out thoughts so that the shavings fly. I see myself wandering the landscape, making invisible notes, capturing glimpses here and there somewhere in the caches of the brain's folds, from which they will eventually surface from sentences, images, whatever. This is certainly how most of us travel through the world, sensing, and then, after the memories have become permanently etched, looking at them over and over again. Some of us feel the need to process those particles of thoughts, forming new words and images, and for others it is enough to examine the memories internally without opening them to anyone. The experience is surely common to all of us on some level. At times we feel like opening up like a page cut open in a book, or a picture appearing out of nowhere, showing us our own memory as made by someone else. I am a visual artist and I have the slightly knobby fingers of a craftsman, wrinkled skin folds covering the joints, and a sensitive touch at the fingertips. It is important for me to be able to feel the quality of the paper with my fingers, the nature of the wooden and metal plates, the sharpness of the edges, roundness, softness, roughness. My hands know how much the roller needs to be pressed or not pressed against the plate so that the color spreads exactly as desired. The right thickness, the right thinness, fullness, covering or translucent. Everything depends on touch. The hand must know. It must be able to feel the intentions of the material. The material is like a living being. You feel in your skin what is coming. I often print large works by hand. I rub the image with my palm. The color is on the plate, the paper or fabric under my hand against the plate. The image is absorbed into the printing surface, invisible to my eyes. Only my hands know and feel the depressions of the wood grains, the grooves carved into the slab. Something happens through the power of my touch, and I wonder how the image, as it were, agrees to reveal itself as it emerges from invisibility into visibility. Neurology professor Oliver Sacks writes about the importance of skill as the basis of artistic activity. Skill allows time to mature the creator so that the new idea, action, or approach can emerge. Sacks gives several examples of how artists and researchers have tried to solve a scientific or artistic problem and how the answer has been found years later, unexpectedly, when active problem solving has been put on hold. However, the solution is not possible unless the researcher or artist has sufficient skill capacity on which a new idea or way of doing things can be born. How can we know if our sludge and dawdle are actually creative maturing of things? Something is happening hidden in silence when nothing is happening externally. Can a sludge be compared to a sprain? A sprain allows for physical stopping, a pause, forcing us to rest. Does idleness or loitering, falling into loitering, allow the brain to sigh for a moment, to move into a state of emptiness from which something new and unexpected can sprout? The German philosopher Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel has also written about skill, and he puts it simply, saying that an artist needs skill in order to master external matter and not let its resistance become an obstacle. There are many kinds of skill, and technical manual skill is not the most significant in making art, but it is not useless either. The most important thing is the skill of attracting something from non-existence that has not yet been revealed, waiting to be revealed in a form that can be perceived by the senses. Closely related to skill is humility, the perception of the impossibility of perfection. Agnes Martin writes about discipline, continuing work without resistance or preconceptions. According to her, discipline is continuing to work even when hope and desires have been left behind. Continuing without self-speculation, acting impersonally is self-discipline. Martin argues that it is self-discipline not to think, not to plan, not to calculate. Not to care or strive for anything is self-discipline. Martin speaks of renouncing oneself and wanting something. Maurice Blanchot says that a writer becomes a writer when he stops saying I. According to Blanchot, when writing, one becomes an echo of something that cannot stop speaking. In this situation, the fact that in one way or another they have ceased to be themselves and they are no longer anyone speaks in the writer. In a world where everyone should be someone, it is difficult to learn and teach how to become nobody, even if it is the only path to liberated expression. Surrendering to an unpredictable dialogue, agreeing to give up the idea that the destination is known and achievable requires discipline. Agreeing to be still requires discipline, and settling into inaction. Can such purposeful inaction be called loitering? Does inaction enable the presence of the immaterial? I compare in my mind a print of a graphic and a printed book, both of which are full of immateriality bound to matter. I am marked by words and images, etched by the immaterial love conveyed by art. I do not want to give up these traces drawn on me. The best thing in the process of making is in those moments when the self has been eroded away and in its place is a nobody, a nothing, a present someone who surrenders to the will of the work and makes the invisible visible. Chuang Tzu wrote, "He who is at rest is empty. He who is empty is filled, and he who is filled becomes perfect. He who is empty is calm, he who is calm moves, and he who moves reaches his destination. He who is calm is inactive, and he who is inactive demands that those who do fulfill their duties. He who is inactive rejoices, and he who rejoices cannot linger in sorrow. He lives long." As an artist, I live in a non-linear time, moving through years and decades, always returning to the themes that I thought had already been forgotten. Marcel Proust reflects on the importance of sensory experiences for our memories and the possibility that those experiences give us to move between different times, to live simultaneously in the past and the present. He writes about the intrusion of the past into the present and how he no longer knew which time he was living in. I practice idleness, but it is very difficult. I walk and walk, inventing new routes to avoid a predetermined destination. The sky is clear, and I listen to the sound of water approaching. Is the sound approaching me, or am I approaching the sound? I look at the stream and wonder if the stream is bubbling. Is it idle? Could moving water bubble? How slowly would the water have to flow for it to be called bubbling, flowing idly? Can the water reveal to me the secret of inaction? Chuang Tzu says that wandering in lakes and swamps, living idle in the wilderness, fishing for fish in complete peace, doing nothing as the only pursuit. These are the habits of one who has learned from lakes and rivers, of a person who has withdrawn from the world and who values only idleness. Fortunately, he adds a little later that one can be idle even if one does not wander in rivers and lakes, and one can attain a long life without practicing the art of breathing. But Can one be idle and at the same time disciplined in one's own actions? And doesn't skill have any place? And does the length of one's life matter when weighing the significance of life? You have to dare to do what you don't know how to do, to go where there is no prepared path. That is, to wander and drift without knowing where you are going. Giving up your personal attitude requires skill. Skill is giving up on yourself, the reckless courage to jump even when you are not sure if your wings will carry you. How can such skills be taught in a world where education is expected to lead to success in both economic terms and social esteem? Can a person who avoids work be called skilled if inaction gives nature the opportunity to go wild, diversify, and restore itself instead of many measures that increase efficiency? I loiter. I lie on the bed. I walk in the mountains. I swim in the river, the sea, in muddy puddles, and everywhere thoughts are rioting inside my head. Not doing begins when I grab a pen, a brush, an engraver. I start making marks on various surfaces. I don't understand how this has turned into this. What was supposed to be idleness, that is preparing to do, gathering random observations, bodily experiences and traveling, spending time with friends and family, suddenly feels like hustle and bustle, a breathless swing in which I rush to wherever I want. I do frantically who knows what without doing anything. And when I do intentionally, I feel that I have moved into timelessness of not doing. As soon as I start doing real work, so to speak, my work as an artist, peace descends upon me and I let go. The entire universe opens up from a small picture and the light shines through the dense mass of lines like a cold full moon or a scorching sun. Printmaking is the art of transfer and transmission. Many people think that the actual creative work is done in the sketch and design stages and that working on the printing plate is just some kind of technical stage. Personally, I experience the process of printmaking as a collaboration with the material. I want one thing, and sometimes the material wants another, and then something completely new is created. And this is the power of art, the will of the work, which when surrendered to becomes marked by art and at the same time supported by it. You can surrender to a work only by agreeing to a state of non-doing, even if you are working without stopping. Social scientists Päivi Rantala and Anu Valtonen have studied naps and the experiences of people who do creative work with soundscapes that enable sleep. Although the primary question of the study was related to the theme of silence and sounds in connection with naps, the data also raised a reflection on the justification of naps. Is it permissible to sleep during the day? I could ask for my part whether sleeping during the day, so naps, is loitering, napping, or brain maintenance. As Rantala and Valtonen ask who is permitted to sleep during the day, I ask who is permitted to nap in peace without a bad conscience or disapproval from the outside world. Tricia Hearsay writes about rest as resistant. She urges people to rest, dream, resist, and imagine. Hearsay advocates for naps even when the world disapproves. It is precisely because of the possibility of art life and discipline that I want to think about idleness, giving myself and others permission to idle, loiter, and do nothing. I ask those I meet whether they have permission to loiter, who gets idleness, and what is the difference between idleness, loitering, doing nothing, and resting. Is the permission to loiter tied to class, wealth, employment, or unemployment? Who is allowed to practice the self-discipline of not doing, and who must do even if they don't want to? Is the permission to idle a prerequisite for democracy? Dictators want to keep their subject constantly busy so that there is no room for too much thinking. Researchers Hanna Kuusela from Tampere University writes in her book Accusation that professors have turned universities into places where they spend a third of the year looking for money, another third assessing whether others are earning money, and the last third worrying whether they will get money themselves, and finally congratulating those who did out of envy. However, I would not blame the professors for the state of affairs because they have not created a funding system for universities based on performance targets. The number crunchers are elsewhere, and they are not scheming, but rather carrying out the orders of unknown masters. Have dictators started to rule universities too? Is there time and space to think there? Are we allowed to loiter? Is it possible to sleep somewhere other than underground? The philosopher Anne Conway lived during the time when Descartes wrote about the separation of mind and body. Man was seen as something quite different from other living beings. Conway was a member of the Cambridge Platonists and a student of Henry Moore. Conway's main philosophical text, Principles of the Most Ancient and Modern Philosophy, was published anonymously after Conway's death in 1690. Conway argued strongly against the Cartesian worldview and claimed that we all living things, plants, minerals, people, animals, are one. Quote, yeah, daily experience teaches us that species of diverse things are changed one into another, as earth into water, and water into air, and air into fire, and also stones are changed into metals, and one metal into another, and animals, worms, are changed into flies, and so on. And in the end, a human is changed into earth. End of quote. Conway didn't talk about non-human animals and other difficult to form concepts, but declared that we are all the same species. We can change into each other. Each of us can experience our own metamorphosis. I must become the earth again. So, inspired by Conway, I descend underground into a peat house, which is like a living organism and inside which I become part of the people of the earth. Could I just linger here for a moment? Tinna Gretasdottir and Sigurjón Baldur Hafsteinsson from the University of Iceland led the research project Fiction, in which we visited old Icelandic peat houses with the research team. We hung out outside, breathing in the scent of the earth under the peat. We felt a leisurely connection to the earth. A traditional peat house has two faces. From the main entrance, the house looks like any other wooden farmhouse with a gable roof, but when you go around the back of the house, the view is different. The house almost disappears under the grass, and only the glimpse of small windows through the grass tells you that the human habitation is somewhere underground. And when you enter the house, you can't help but feel like you belong to the same species as all the other underground creatures. A peat house is a strange place that swallows the inhabitant into the bowels of the earth, into corridors, some of which lead deeper underground, and others into rooms covered with plank floors and boarded walls. Layers of peat and stones alternate in the walls and provide a safe habitat for all kinds and sizes of insects. As a human, I could turn into earth, soil, food for other species as a result of the house digestion. The thought is not frightening, but in some way calming. I must become the earth again. Grétarsdóttir and Hafsteinsson call the Icelandic peat house a superorganism, a multi-species entity of entangled roots, lichen, soil, fungi, mycelium, microbes, stones, wood, insects, cows, sheep, dogs, people, to name just a few. A peat house can be experienced as a space of heritage from the past, but also as a space of the future. The architecture of a peat house is such that it is a genuine co-creation and habitation of human and non-human beings, which takes time to build. The formation of a community of people living in a peat house into a living organism also takes time, like the emergence of any community. One must be present in time and place. I breathe the underground, and sometimes I lie down on the grass with my eyes fixed on the sky above. I walk up the slope, following the sounds of the water. I come to the flowing water and think that it is not the river, and it is not a stream, too narrow for a river, but too wide for a stream. I take off my clothes and step into the ice-cold water. Maybe some of my skin will go with the current somewhere, where the channel opens up and the water becomes part of a larger body of water. Could I become a river like this? Am I now on the verge of the idle activity described by Zhuangzi? Am I following in the footsteps of the Finnish writer Pentti Haanpää, walking on deserted roads, on misty field edges, with my only task being to observe the silence, the occasional sounds of birds, and listen to the noise of the inner world, which will then, sometime later, form words, sentences, entire stories. Have I gotten any closer to loitering? I am pondering now in terms of time duration. Resting differs from taking a break, sleeping from falling asleep, dozing from loitering, let alone being idle. The time duration of loitering is definitely shorter than that of being idle. So taking a break could be more socially acceptable than being idle, but would it be more beneficial in terms of thinking than actual loitering, long-term inaction? A mini loitering is like a momentary stumble, a break which requires a corrective move and a change of direction, a return to the right track, to the safe path. Slowing down, not doing anything, withdrawing from the world, silent resistance to the prevailing culture is always smoldering somewhere, and unexpectedly it bursts into flames. Eero Tarasti writes about the positive culture of resistance in science and art. Tarasti speaks of heroes whose heroism is based on refraining from force, not wanting, and not doing, those virtues recorded by Zhuangzi. Tarasti writes about the possibility of choosing between different alternatives. Resistance is only possible through genuine choice, and the possibility of choice increases resistance. I ponder my own possibilities of choosing the path of inaction. Can I get more by choosing less? Less official working hours and the financial compensation that comes with it, and more time for personal time consumption, that is, for doing art and research. Canadian professors Maggie Berry and Barbara K. Sieber wrote a book about the irrational rush of academic work. Their output was a gesture of resistance against the prevailing culture of speed. It has been almost 10 years since the book was published, and nothing has changed. The speed has only accelerated, and the performance targets have become tougher. I no longer expect institutions to make corrective moves for me. The university will not budge, even if its government may momentarily falter. All the time in the world is on my side, and I have the opportunity to choose. Taking a break is too short-lived inaction to enable loitering. Inaction requires idleness without the time limit, without a quick return to be beaten path. I demand the right to idleness in order to be able to function as an artist and researcher. I demand the right to idleness for you too, whoever you may be, because we all need the skill of thinking. Now, suddenly, into the underground, into the otherworldly, into the cool arms of the river, so that presence would be possible. Quickly, quickly, and then yes. Thank you. Do you have questions or comments, or do you want to take a pause and think?
Beautiful. It's such a kind of rich and a thought approach that kind of coming from and to and through your ideas. Absolutely gorgeous. And a kind of a lingering as well, which I really appreciate. You really kind of gave that a doing as well as kind of all those kind of beautiful and kind of roots through. Yes, I'd love to open questions to the room. Is there something that's settled with you, an image, an idea, a question, of course, a hesitation? And let's start the discussion from there, please. You can come in on those online if you want to speak something, or you can write something in the chat as well. Or we can just sit with it as well. Thank you, Anna, that was beautiful. I have missed you. Come on in.
Well,
Maria.
yeah.
Hello. Thank you so much. That was just incredible. And I was thinking about loitering, like it really feeds into what's going on in my research journey, because I'm doing stuff about the city and the idea of like there being places in London where they're they're kind of flowing, but like this idea of like the stream where some bits just like get stuck and other bits flow. It's like loitering seems to change the landscape. So it's like, and I think that there's a sort of denigration of the people who loiter, like, and in someone like Mayhew, who maps the city in the 19th century on a socioeconomic thing, he has a whole thing about those who will not work. And there's this whole thing about those who will not work are like, what are they doing, occupying these places, doing their thing? But having done a thing where I worked as a takeaway delivery person, you had to have this incredible combined identity that was, you were on call the whole time in a gamification of delivering things on time for customers. But the whole real culture was that you just hung around in groups where you could find a place in the city where you'd be not moved on. And there you would share all your knowledge about where to go, where the game worked, but also like how to get away with sort of what tricks you could play to the corporate place. So it's like loitering was such a massive part of who you were, but the way it was read or registered was that you were inside this fast thing. And it was like you were at the bottom of this thing where other people were reading. It's a bit like a war room. Other people were reading things and they were going, God, there's too many clustering over there. Because, yeah, it was a nice place for us to be. Send more incentive to go to that place that's like, 4 miles out in the city in a really posh place where all the houses are like really far away from each other in valleys and dips and stuff like that. So what I really got from your thing was this sense of like, when you loiter, you get a different relationship to the sound. And when you get a different relationship to the sound, you get a different relationship to memory of the place.
Mm.
When you get a different relationship to memory, the landscape literally starts changing. It was that really loved from your thing that I'll take into what I'm doing. Is this, how does loitering change landscape?
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you, Marie. That was lovely. And I'm kind of struck by the delivery, kind of a person's view of kind of London alongside you and your window and the snow, and that environment is incredible way of both being kind of slow and fast, depending on which way you turn. So sorry, go.
Also, this sort of, I was just thinking also when you were speaking that, how we load the words with our own experiences, that, that just, about speaking an urban environment, but naming it the landscape makes all the difference. If we speak about the constructed environment, it makes the space into completely something else than if we speak about the landscape. And even if it's the same physical environment, but it makes sort of all the different in the way we kind of our sensory experience from that space, and memory and description changes completely with the words.
Absolutely. I love that idea of urban being landscape. There's something so lovely there. Thank you. Colette, do you want to come in and ask?
Yes, hi. Gosh,
Hi.
thank you so much for this wonderful reading, and the way you read it. The words were excellent at bringing up all of the emotions, which I think that's what you were trying to do. I'm an early researcher, and I'm a sort of a printmaker, a photographer printmaker. And one of my main method, I've called idle time, and I came to it from similar experiences that you've described. And I thought this was my own idea. So I listened to you speaking and I'm like, oh my goodness, this wonderful lady not only has the same experience, which I'm sure many artists do, but you've written about it. And it looks like, I just quick looked up online that you have other publications. So my question to you is, I'd like to access your work if I can, because clearly this wasn't my own idea. And may I contact you to find out more of the articles and more about your research, because it's so much more than I could have comprehended on my own.
Yeah, and I told Bob that I would share this paper with you, but because it's sort of I have written the original is in Finnish, so this is my own translation, and I just need to do a little bit language check, because I might have some sort of not good English expressions, but it's kind of yeah, I will share the paper, but it's not published in English. Okay. So in that way, but you are free to sort of have it. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So
when
I will send this one to Bob as a PDF,
Bob
and
Whaley.
then and
Okay.
yeah, and you can get my email address from Bob, because then I have also articles published in English that where I'm discussing these things, and then yeah.
And I looked at your art online. It's extraordinary. It's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Making the invisible visible. It's wonderful. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you, Colette. That was beautiful, and we could put we could, with your permission, Jana, put some of the information, not your email address, but some of the references on the Padlet that we've made.
Yes.
As a kind of a companion to this day. Perhaps we'll have a thing, but what a wonderful thing. Thank you, Colette. That was
Thank
amazing.
you. Bob, is that you speaking?
Yes.
Oh, great. Hi.
Hi.
Anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. That was a beautiful kind of question and also statement. Your work is lovely. Please, I encourage people to kind of go and explore and have a look at Jo's work. It's absolutely. Tioma, come on in, please. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for this talk. I really like this idea of urban spaces as landscape, and I have also done some work around the notion of being idle in digital or online spaces. So this is making me wonder about framing a digital space or exchange like this as also a landscape, because I feel that we come to these spaces with, for me, additional pressure for productivity, or there's generally a reason when I'm on my computer screen for a call like this, which may or may not be the case when I'm in a in-person space with someone. So that's been a theme in my research that this reminded me of. And I also really appreciated your comment about taking a break with a defined endpoint in mind, that is not enough. It's not the same thing as entering an idle space, because it's still within this sort of framework or way of segmenting time. And I guess my question for you, because you brought this for me also to a question of like much larger scale, thinking very long term. Okay, there was a book published 10 years about this. It hasn't changed necessarily on an institutional level. And if we're thinking 10, 20, 100 years into the future, you know, the change itself is also something that's slow. It's why we require this slowness. But what I'm wondering is to hear your thoughts on then, what does it mean to have sort of like objectives and goals towards change in slow research while we sit inside a slow or an idle space? Is there a contradiction or a parity there? It's just something on my mind, and I would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think that there is a sort of a huge contradiction in one level. But then I think that, or I would say, I don't only think, my experience is that actually it is possible to slow down and somehow sort of live and work according to your own values. But it just needs that you have to sort of, if you work in the academic world, or I would say any paid job, but especially if there is this kind of freedom, at least in somehow plan your own work, you have to sort of you have to learn the concepts and the vocabulary of the time, the current academia, and then you just have to kind of you have to sort of have one wording for your sort of official environment, the administration, and one wording kind of for your what you really want to do. And for example, this many of my colleagues, they are really laughing about this, my wishful thinking of entering the state of loitering. And because they see that I might be running in a corridor or frantically doing something and sort of, yeah. But at the same time, for example, this slow thinking laboratory really sort of taught me that there is space and possibility for actually this kind of a completely resistance filled way of being and working if you can articulate it in the way that sort of the world understands. And it's sort of yeah, like this slow research, or now we are actually leaving this afternoon to the Fells. University has this kind of a log cabin there, so we are 7 colleagues, so we are writing a book about silence and slowness. And so so we go there, and it's we don't expect actually to do very much work during the weekend, but it's we are going for walks, we are going to have sauna, and we sort of we loiter and chat, and but that is possible when there is, in a sort of further away, there is an aim to actually publish about this thing, and so that it's a kind of there are measures. We can't avoid in academic world certain targets and measures, but then if only you can sort of create the measure. For example, I could my choice could have been, I could have chosen to study the economics of the art world. But my choice has been to study concepts of loitering. In Finnish, they are lovely. You can play with the words. It's lorvia is loitering. Lorvahdus is kind of a, when you make a small loitering, kind of like, if you walk and then you stumble and then you take a correction. So this, yeah, how different time lengths of idleness, loitering, pause, break can be. And I think we are very privileged that we can spend time in thinking about those kind of things, and then and connecting with the art making. So that I think that that's something what we that we always have a certain framework where we sort of we are within the academic world, but then it is just that whereabouts can you expand the borders, what you fill that box, with your kind of your own, what is your own room about, and space, and how you name it. I think this naming, like, if you name the digital space a landscape, or a space of my own, or yeah. Alison has put that loitering is criminal in UK.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, loitering with intent is potentially a criminal act. I just thought that was quite interesting.
Yes.
Yeah. So then you have to sort of find a new concept for it. Is being idle a criminal act? You can meditate. You can have a sort of because I think that's in UK. It's very well received. People do meditate. You are in a meditative state.
And I think there's a case for reclaiming loitering also, just based on what you've said. So that's the idea of having intent also. Clearly it's a criminal intent in that case, but you're loitering with different intentions. So I like the play on words. Yeah,
and I like this. It's also in Finnish, loitering, lorvia. It's kind of it's associated very much with unemployment, with migrants who have nothing to do and they are loitering in the street corners, or it's mainly young men who loiter, and I really want to kind of resist that thing. Sort of, it's not only, you know, it's depends us people how we use certain words and concepts. Yeah. Good.
Thank you, Alison. That was lovely. Did you want to know the names of the Canadian scholars?
Yes, but I guess if you're going to share the paper, it'll be part of that, so that's not a problem.
Fantastic.
Yeah, they were Maggie Berry and then Sieber, Barbara K. Sieber, but I will, and they have written a book. The name of the book is The Slow Professor, Challenging the Culture of Speed in the Academy, and University of Toronto Press.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Berry is Berg, B-E-R-G, and Sieber, S-E-E-B-E-R.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mo, did you want to come in and speak this? Oh, it's gone, I think. It's gone. I'll say Mo says the artist makes the work and the work makes the artist. I like that kind of iterative loop. Well, thank you. Foucault writes in Civilization that idleness was criminalized in 16th century France. Thank you. Oh, thank you, Tioma, for the link. Is that for the text? Thank you very much. Anybody in the room? Come on in. Come forward.
I really, I'm thinking about, Jaana, about the part in your paper where you reimagine time as inexhaustible, or you pointed to time as inexhaustible. So I really appreciated that, because I think my own mindset is that I'm always running out, and that it's scarce, and actually my mindset is reinforced by many other things, certain ideologies that are around. I think maybe I was interested in maybe shifting, and I think you do this, but maybe I'm just asking you to do a little bit more of like shifting the register from the individual to the group, or like the collective, and just to think about the way politics is played out in that. And I'm thinking about the way so many of the things, the regimes of efficiencies land with the individual as either being superior or failing towards them. So they seem to make us internalize these as our own failures rather than, structural. And I think you were, in a sense, your critique was framed appropriately in the domain that you work in, which is academia, and how it's maybe thinks about those things. But anyway, maybe my question for you, to turn that into a question, it's to ask, in that slow lab, were there things that happened there that move the question towards something collective or shared, or were there things that happened in that space that you could never have imagined that allowed you to think about the problem in a different way?
In that sort of that aquarium, it was kind of I would say a first pilot for Slow Lab, a common space in university. But then when we actually got the research funding, so we were collaborating with one rehabilitation home. It was a sort of originally made a rehabilitation home for war veterans. And then we were creating there sort of, and people who were there, they were quite severely physically handicapped, some were traumatized. So they didn't really have a good access to natural world, even if that institution was in the forest. So there the Slow Lab was, we took in a way the nature into the lab there. So with natural materials, and there people could, and small sort of quite not sort of shallow sand boxes that they could have on a table and actually create landscapes and tell the stories of their lives. And it was sort of collaborative work. People were there together. Sometimes it was, I spent quite a lot of their time to sort of collect the data and talking with people. And as in Finland, even in institutions, you have your sauna days. So quite often their families were visiting there. So, and when the clients were taken to sauna, sort of the men went to sauna, their wives stayed or children in there. And so they were actually also building these, making the sort of landscapes in the sandboxes and talking. And so in that way, that Slow Lab also, because there wasn't a goal that you have to finalize a work, so that it was, and you couldn't take it away. So it was kind of, you would carry on somebody else's work or change everything in that sandbox, and then somebody would come and carry on your work. So that in way the timelessness came, that these creative sandboxes, landscapes, they didn't have any beginning or end, but it was sort of the work carried in them, just continued, but it was continued by someone else. And the discussions were there, so that it was kind of a space that enabled both individual memorizing, going back into your own sort of thought, doing something on your own, or then doing it with your families, because also there was a question sometimes, when you go and visit a person who is in that kind of institution and is not coming back, there's, sometimes there comes a thing that you don't have anything to say, and you can't sort of tell the same news because nothing happens. And then this kind of small creative action that can trigger your memories and take you in a way to another place, because many of them started to tell their childhood memories from the woods and forests and countryside, or then some other places. So that it is a collaborative work as well.
Thank you. That was beautiful. Thank you for that description. Anna, did you have a question, Anna?
Hi.
Hi, come on in.
Hi, Anna. Nice to see you. I have a divagation. It's not a question. I was sitting here and I was listening. I came a bit late to your reading, but I think I caught maybe most of it. But I was wondering about domestic loitering. And I think I do a lot of domestic loitering. And that got me thinking about where I grew up. It was a fishing town in Portugal. And there's this thing that women sort of spend a lot of time out looking out at the window. So you sort of open the window and then they go like that, and they just watch, they just spend hours watching the world go by. And I was wondering, is that loitering? But it sort of feels like it a little bit, but you're not moving. Or sort of hanging, sort of moving about. And it's also in a interior, in a private space rather than a public space. So I was also thinking about that and thinking about so if we think about this domestic loitering and this sort of indoor, and how would that look or feel like or apply within the institution? So the loitering inside the institution, which is quite interesting if loitering is something that, here in the UK, or as I understood it, could be a criminal activity, and in terms of kind of the academic labor as well, and I'm thinking about those things. I don't have a question, but it's just all these thoughts that are coming to, like, oh, this and that, and jumping from one place to another, and I just kind of wanted to share and sort of, and I think that sort of looking out the window is interesting because it's a bit of is used to sort of keep up with the gossip of what's going on, who's wearing what, who goes where, and they spend hours. It's usually older women, and they spend hours doing this. But it's also a way of kind of keeping connected, I guess, with the community and with the place. There you go. I think that's it. That's all I was thinking about, but as an offering.
Thank
as
you.
a response to you.
I think there is a lot of domestic loitering. So, and it's interesting that, people would not think that you are loitering if you are, for example, watching television. Or then it depends what you are watching in television. If you are watching a documentary or some sort of a political discussion or something, that's not loitering. But if you are watching Heartbeat, like in UK, that might be close to loitering. And I think that, and it's kind of, I think it's a really interesting sort of concept, that how we think that like you described it. It used to be also in Finland, in countryside, that women normally didn't have time to sit outside and loiter, but men could sit after the work on the benches and chat. But that would be coming together, looking after your social life. And then, and I think that it's really interesting this, that when, it comes to this question, who has a right and legacy to loiter, that, if it's a respectful, housewives who come together, or even if they do it on your own, but you do it from your own home and you have full right to be there, it's fine. If it's a kind of, depending where you do it, with whom you do it, what is your status quo in that environment? But I'm sort of promoting loitering in every which way, not harming to anybody. So not taking a criminal action, pickpocketing and loitering, but just sort of relaxing and loitering. I'm afraid we are running towards the end of the time, because I have to go and loiter in the fells.
Of course. And I just want to thank you. Thank you, Anna. That was a beautiful question to kind of end. And I want to thank you, Anna. That was incredible. I love our kind of our slow kind of questioning and your answer, the time you took. Thank you so much. And I hope that the time in the fells is amazing. And
thank you.
And it's met with joy.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all. And I will send to your email the PDF.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Can we thank you once more? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Bye. I leave the Teams.
Yes,
Bye.
please. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks so much.